Hello, I'm Mark Ellen. Thanks for clicking this word in your ear, the latest of hundreds of conversations David Hepworth and I have had on this podcast we started 17 years ago. Some with ourselves, others with musicians, authors, comedians, and other people we like. If you enjoy them and want to support us and keep it all coming and get extra entertainment, including the weekly quiz and a special event on your birthday, visit patreon.com/word in your ear or just like or subscribe in whatever way you prefer.
Word down your way. Testing 2, 2.
Welcome to another edition of Word Down Your Way, and another musician about to set out on tour, Mike Scott, who has a new Waterboys album out as well with a fantastic title, Life, Death and Dennis Hopper. That is splendid. Mike, it's very good to see you, and you're in Dublin, right?
I'm in my studio in Dublin, Mark, yeah.
And how long, you've lived in Dublin a while?
This time, 18 years, 17 years.
Oh, right, okay. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, look, there's a tour coming up soon, and what we were going to do was to take you back to the first memories you have of seeing any gigs. Who was the first band you saw? Can you remember?
Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Oh, that's good.
Brilliant.
See, that's a good answer.
That's a good. You're not making that up. That's
No.
good.
No.
So where was it, and what drew you, and who did you go with?
It was at Glasgow Green's Playhouse, shortly after to be renamed the Apollo. And an older friend of mine called Frank Myrtle, who is a bit of a head, he recommended ELP to me, and I only knew one of their songs. I knew Knife Edge because it had been on the Island sampler LP.
LP?
LP, we know that, yes.
Yeah. So off I went to see ELP, and well, it was all right. I wasn't a great fan. It was all right.
It's an interesting introduction to pop music, isn't it? Emerson, Lake and Palmer, if you think
it's
about
all
it.
spectacle.
Well, of course, I'd been into pop music for a long time. It's just my first live experience. The second show I went to was Nazareth. I enjoyed that a lot more. But my third show was Paul McCartney and Wings.
Oh, wow.
That was great.
Going back to Green's Playhouse, and that became the Glasgow Empire. Is that what you said?
Glasgow Apollo.
Glasgow Apollo. Is that the one with the really high stage?
Yeah.
It's terrifying, the prospect of anybody falling off that stage.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yes. I played on it myself a few years later.
Don't go too near.
People
the
say
edge.
they actually get vertigo looking down. They don't dare look down at the audience.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
It doesn't exist anymore. It's a car park now.
Right,
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, sadly.
my God.
Right.
So what do you remember of the Wings show? That would have been a good thing to see. My
That
God.
was brilliant. I was up in the balcony, but it was absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere, because it was a Beatle, you know.
Yeah.
And when he did Long Tall Sally at the end for the encore, place just went buck mental.
Yeah. So who was in Wings in those days?
Henry McCulloch, Denny
Oh, right.
Lane, Denny Sewell, and Linda.
Right. Very good. Yeah. So when did you first perform yourself?
My first shows would have been 76, maybe. A lunchtime show at Air Academy.
Right.
What was the band called? Was it a band?
It was called...
Karma? Well, you had a band called Karma, didn't you?
They never played a show, sadly. The band was called Freefall.
Freefall.
Yeah.
That's very of the time, isn't it?
Yes.
So were you doing covers or stuff you'd written?
I'm glad to say we did a few originals. We had one called Freefall.
And everyone just sat there, just going, yeah, right, you know.
Yeah.
I know what
And
he
we
means.
We did a few covers. We did Sympathy for the Devil, I remember. That was our
right.
favorite number.
Nothing
to play.
ambitious.
Yeah.
So were you always confident going on in front of people?
I was back then, but I lost confidence at some point and then kind of had to work my way in getting it back. But right at the start, I had a natural confidence. I just appear on stage and kind of strut around and never think about it. I didn't have any self-consciousness.
Oh, really? Yeah. So when you first went on stage, you acted as if you were already famous kind of thing?
Well, I didn't really think about it. I acted as if I belonged on the stage, really. Yeah.
Right. Were you hiding behind a guitar, or were you, naked at the mic stand?
I was playing a guitar.
Right. No. Okay. But no, it kind of makes a difference, doesn't it? Really, something to hide behind as well.
Yeah.
Was there anybody you saw that you particularly thought you could borrow some of their repertoire of stage performance from?
Not really, no. Do you mean like performers?
Yeah, just the way
tricks
that the way their idea of what we're supposed to be loosely called stagecraft.
Actually, there was one thing. I went to see the Stones at Glasgow Apollo in 1973, and they were absolutely fantastic. They were still dangerous then. And I'll never forget Mick Jagger. He came out on the stage moving fast. He got to the center of the stage very, very quickly. And he was doing this to the audience. And it kind of brought everybody close.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a magnificent beginning. And I've stolen that a few times.
Right.
That's a brilliant ruse, isn't it? Very, very clever.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about conquering space, isn't it? That thing that you're going to kind of occupy the gulf between you and the audience.
That's
presumably.
right. You have to project to the person in the back row, yes, and bring them all in. Yeah.
Right. What's the biggest place you've ever played?
Probably festivals.
What's the biggest festival that you've done?
I don't know.
Right. Okay.
Don't know.
And but when you're playing a festival, who do you concentrate on? Is it the people down the front, or?
I concentrate on the music, man.
Right. But in terms of projection, you must look at certain people in the audience.
I don't. I'll explain why. I always used to be one of these performers who would make eye contact with the audience. I would sing looking at the audience. And then I wrote a song called The Christ in You. And the lyric was, I'm going to look twice at you until I see the Christ in you. And it was a very intimate kind of song. And we had this gig in Cologne. It was a special launch gig for the album that this song was on. And the audience was very close. It was an acoustic gig. The audience was very close. And I noticed when I was singing this song, I'm going to look twice at you until I see the Christ in you, none of the audience could make eye contact with me. It was too hot for them. So I felt I'll give them a break. I won't look at them anymore. So I couldn't close my eyes because I don't know if you've ever closed your eyes while you're speaking into a microphone. I bump into the microphone and lose my balance if I close my eyes. So what I did was I looked at the end of the microphone, like Paul Weller used to do. I used to think Paul was an awful twit for looking at it. I used to think, why is he looking at the end of the microphone? Well, now I know, because once I started looking at the end of the microphone, suddenly I wasn't distracted by the audience anymore. And the music just came into this beautiful focus for me. And I've never looked at an audience since that moment.
That's interesting.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Because there's always the thing about looking at the audience that they always say, do you look at the people who appear to be with you, or do you try and win the people who don't appear to be with
you? Yeah. I just don't go there.
Right.
Yeah.
And also with a big audience, it must be really hard to see any kind of change. It must take a long time for to get a sense that they're in a different mood or responding differently.
I guess so. I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about this new record. You've got it behind you, I think, haven't you?
That's a print of the cover, yeah. It's the life story of Dennis Hopper told in songs.
Right.
Why did you decide to do that? It's very interesting.
Oh, he's such a fascinating character, and I'd written a song about him, a single song about him, and I thought we might put it out as a digital EP if I could just think of another couple of aspects of Dennis's life to write about, and we'd have a nice little EP, and then it just kind of ran away with itself and turned into a whole lot of songs. And actually, my band members sent me some instrumentals for me to add lyrics to. It was a lovely surprise gift one day, and suddenly I had 10 songs about Dennis Hopper, and I realized it's an album.
What were the aspects of his life that you did write about then? Give us some.
That I didn't.
Yeah, that you did. Yeah, well, give us some examples.
Of what I did write about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a track called Blues for Terry Southern. Terry Southern, as I'm sure you know, was a screenwriter and novelist, and he coined the title Easy Rider, and he helped them write the script, but because they never signed a contract, he never got paid for it. So I wrote a song called Blues for Terry Southern about exactly that. Then there's an instrumental for each of his 5 wives. There's a song called 10 Years Gone about his lost decade of when he was burned out and drinking and taking lots of drugs. There's another song called Golf, they say, about near the end of his life when he became an ardent golfer.
Okay, yes, of course.
That's a radical change from the guy on the back of the motorbike.
Yeah.
Became a golfer. Didn't we see him once at an awards show, Dave, reciting the entire poem If?
Wearing a fabulous tweed suit.
He was.
If I recall. Looking
That was
like
a favourite of his.
Yeah, he just suddenly just got up and instead of making speech, he just recited the entire poem. Incredibly dramatic and fantastic. One of the best things I've ever seen on stage.
It was a solution to the problem. If you're ever called upon to speak at an award ceremony of any kind, just recite If by Kipling and you'll be absolutely fine. People will be hanging on your every word.
It will.
Yeah. So this tour is going to involve a load of these songs. Is there stuff other songs that you always have to do when you step on stage nowadays?
Yeah, well, I suppose I don't have to do them, but fortunately I like playing the songs that people want to hear, like The Whole of the Moon and Fisherman's Blues. I love doing those songs.
Right. Do you always put them in the same place in the set? Or do you
No, I don't. No, they move around.
Right. So,
and they're doing the whole catalogue, basically, the whole span. Because you've had so many different sounds, as it were.
Yeah.
Interesting combination.
Well, I don't think there's going to be enough time to touch on everything. We hit some of the important points.
So how do you approach set list writing and so forth? Is that a thing done on the night when you're caught into the mood or at the beginning of the tour?
Well, Dave, I'll have a repertoire and I'll know already from the start of the tour which songs are likely to be at the start of the show. And the set list tends to firm up after half a dozen gigs. And I'll still change it a little bit each night, but there are many portions of the show that will stay the same night after night.
Right. So you still enjoy touring. It's not a chore.
Yeah.
So you look forward to it.
And you've got two keyboard players, haven't you? Is that right?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Why? That's really interesting. It's like the band, isn't it? A very rare thing.
Yeah, or the E Street Band, yeah.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Well, of course, I've done it with one keyboard player, when he's got one hand on the organ and one hand on the piano, and I get a bit fed up with that. And so do they, because they can't play either of them with full attention. And it's brilliant to have both.
And are you playing venues that you've played many times before? Do you find yourself?
Some of them, yeah.
Right. Are there particular places you look forward to going back to?
I like loads of places, but Barrowlands in Glasgow is a big favourite. The Barrowlands Ballroom.
Right.
Is that a slightly a kind of homecoming thing? Is that?
It is, yeah. Well, I've lived in so many places. I've got lots of home gigs, but that's one of them, yeah. And of course, Glasgow, as we were talking earlier, Glasgow's where I used to go and see concerts. It was the big town near where I lived as a teenager.
Yeah.
What was the concert? Go on, Dave.
Are there new venues that you play now? You find yourself playing nowadays. You think this is good because people tend to like old venues, don't they? Are there new ones that you like?
Well, the Sage in Newcastle is good.
Oh, of course.
I should say that's a good venue.
Yeah. But there aren't many like the Sage, are there?
No, they call it the Glass House now. I don't know why they changed the name.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Well, Sage must have been the sponsor, I suppose, or something like that. That's possibly why.
Well, we're so old, we still call it the Hammersmith Odeon, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
you can't change these things,
Yeah.
You can't say, I saw Bruce Springsteen at the Eventim Apollo or whatever. It just doesn't really work,
Yeah.
Well, so the greatest gig you ever saw?
Go on.
It's a tie, Mark, between The Clash at Glasgow Apollo in 78 and Leonard Cohen in Dublin in 2009.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah.
What are the particular both at the same time, actually? And Leonard Cohen's was really moving. That tour, my God,
that was it for me too. Yeah.
What are the particular bits that stick in your mind when you think about those two things? Are there particular pictures in your mind?
Yeah, I remember about the Clash gig at the Apollo. Before the show started, they were playing lots of dub reggae, as was the fashion at punk gigs in those days. And after it was a long wait before the Clash, and after about 40 minutes of dub reggae, suddenly the DJ put on Anarchy in the UK, and the place went crazy. It was just fantastic. And then I remember in the encore when they did White Riot, Strummer just lay on the ground, microphone, just screamed into the microphone, lying on his back.
None of that at Leonard Cohen, I would imagine.
No, Leonard didn't do that, but he was brilliant too.
I think at that show,
Leonard introduced his band twice. I remember being very moved by the way he put the focus on each musician. He was so eloquent and praising of the musicians. And a few weeks before, I'd been to see Bob Dylan, who didn't even tell us who the musicians were.
No, he wouldn't.
And the contrast was fantastic. And when Cohen, it actually brought tears to my eyes. He introduced the bass player, who was the MD, and he said, "He's our conscience."
Yeah.
oh,
Such a beautiful thing to say.
Absolutely.
I think that was the tour where he said, because it was a really big venue when I saw him, and well, they were all big venues. And he said, "It's so nice to be here." He said, attempting some kind of intimacy, just the other side of geographical inconvenience, whatever it was. The idea that it was just such a huge place. It was very hard to feel close, but he hoped people did.
Yeah.
He was wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, look, thanks very much for telling us all that. And, so we used to say on the whistle test all those years ago, good luck with the tour.
Thank you.
Very good to talk to you, Mike.